Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, October 6, 2023. In a minute, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski on what is fundamentally wrong with American foreign policy and with the American intelligence community. But first, this. Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Lear Capital. You all know that I am a paid spokesperson for Lear Capital because it's the right thing to do, because the government is regulating too much and printing too much money and reducing the value of everything you earn and everything you own. And the best hedge against this is gold and silver. That's what I've done. I know the folks at Lear. I trust the folks at Lear. I've worked with the folks at Lear, and I use their advice when it comes to my investing in gold and silver. You should do the same. Call them at 800-511-4620 or go to learjudgesnap.com. You'll have a very nice conversation with a very knowledgeable person who'll send you literature to read, which you can review with your spouse and your financial advisor, and then you can call them back and decide what you want to do. Why Lear? Lear has 25 years experience and thousands of five-star reviews and a 24-hour risk-free guarantee. And when you have this conversation with the Lear representative, you'll find out if you can qualify for a $15,000 gold bonus. So call Lear now, 800-511-4620 or learjudgenap.com. Karen, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. How out of control, how misguided, how unrealistic, that's a lot, is United States foreign policy?
Well, it's very unrealistic, for sure. It is really driven by fantasy, I think, in many ways. And I was just thinking about it even today about, we used to talk about the school of realism in foreign policy, and this guided us for many years, even in the early years after World War II was over. And we had people that understood how international power, worked and how we would best be able to deal with friends and adversaries. It was based on the truth. It was realistic. What we have today, I really don't know how these folks got educated. I don't know what has influenced them, but our foreign policy in this country is not based on anything that is real. I think I did a talk at Mises a couple weeks ago, and the talk had to do with military intelligence. And when I put that together, it really was even worse than I thought. And I knew it was pretty bad. But in looking at the way we are doing business today, we aren't even informed. We aren't even bothering to inform ourselves. Our leadership is not even bothering to inform themselves on the very basic information about countries, cultures, politics, power, energy, any of the things that are important in your foreign policy. These are things you must understand to some extent. And they don't bother to even learn the slightest bit about those things. And what they believe is not true. Now your show, you've had guests on with Ukraine, and of course I agree with them. I mean, the information that is guiding our policymakers in Washington about Ukraine, most of it's not true. Most of it is it's beyond propaganda. I mean, it's simply a falsehood, and they are basing policies and decisions and spending hundreds of billions of dollars based on things that aren't true. We can see that, but it goes beyond Ukraine. I think our situation 20 years in Afghanistan, clearly our politicians were not getting a clear picture of what was going on there. And so we're going to be cursed as a country if we cannot figure out how to live as a country in a world of other countries, especially in a nuclear era.
Do you think or do you know if the intelligence community told President George W. Bush that invading and occupying Iraq and invading and occupying Afghanistan would be fruitful? Or do you think they just confirmed his pre-existing prejudices, to use one of your favorite phrases, about the wisdom of these two invasions, which he then perpetrated for his own domestic political purposes.
Yeah. The people that, we have a top intelligence officer, but that person is not an intelligence trained professional. In most cases, it hasn't been for decades. It is a politician. It is a political appointee. So it's someone who understands what is required politically. And that person receives and presumably processes in his own mind, his or her own mind, the intelligence that has already been filtered out by a whole bunch of pressure from a whole bunch of other layers of political filters. And then that person speaks to the president or the decision maker. And it's very watered down by that point, and it's understood. And this was kind of the crux of my talk. I mean, the intelligence community has a customer. That customer is not the American people. That customer is whoever the politicians are. And of course, as we saw with the Trump administration, it's really the deep state, the existing bureaucracy, the folks that are there all the time and never leave and really can shape any presidency as they see fit, whether by cooperating or opposing, as we just got a demonstration from 2016 to 2020, how they can control a president. And certainly they're doing something now because we know Biden's not in charge. He can't even handle his own dogs. He is not doing it, but some organization is doing it. And that organization is political. And it gets the information, it's the customer, it says, feed what I want. And so the intelligence community effectively does that.
You mentioned realism, and I'm going to ask you about realism, lowercase r, not the philosophical concept of realism, but how patently unrealistic is it for United States intel to advise the politicians that we can use Ukraine as a battering ram and it will beat Russia and it will chase Vladimir Putin from office? I mean, a school child would know that is unrealistic.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. It's completely realistic. And in pursuing that line, which is what they've been pursuing for a long time, I mean, even at the point of at 2014, 2015, our policy with Ukraine was a battering ram. It was a tool to use against Russia. To somehow cause problems for Putin, maybe make him go away. This has been a long-term goal. It has been unrealistic from the beginning, but to have sat here now 18, 20 months into this, the invasion and basically the division of the country into its Russia side and its Ukrainian side, and have the Ukrainian side basically completely destroyed. Its population is nearly halved from what it was before. Its industries and its infrastructure is damaged. Billions, I think Zelensky has said how many billions it will take to even get it back to where it was. And and this is a tool that we're using. I mean, this is actually it's insane. It's actually a definition of insanity to think that tool, which was never the right one and now is completely broken, and yet they don't change their strategy. No, this is what we're going to do. It's better for the Ukrainians to die. It'll keep the Russians at bay. It makes no sense, and it's sad.
I'm going to play for you now a clip in English of a female member of the Ukrainian parliament who reluctantly, but she admits this, acknowledges that the so-called spring offensive has failed and that Russia is winning. Now, this is from somebody in the government in an interview on an English-speaking station somewhere in Kyiv.
Counteroffensive is going as planned. Is it going as planned? Well, as much as we can have it going as planned with the amount of weapons and the quality of the ammunition that we're getting. The steadier the deliveries and the bigger the deliveries of the armaments for Ukraine, the faster the counteroffensive can go. That's the problem is you've regained, less than 1% of the ground that you lost before the invasion? Unfortunately, that is the case. And you only have another month to go before? Another month or so before the cold and the winter.
Let's run the next one, Gary.
Russia is winning the battle of a protracted conflict today. So they are winning? In terms of protracted conflict strategies that they're trying to impose on Ukraine and the world, unfortunately, we have to say that they are gaining the upper hand yet again. They have done this back in 2014. The lessons weren't learned. The aid was being delivered too slowly and at a non-stable rate. And this is the results that we are getting.
You can see how reluctant she is, but she appears to be very sincere. I don't know if they have separate parties, if she's in the opposition party, if she's with President Zelensky or what, but this is the first time we've heard something this candid, this direct from someone who is in the government. You will not hear something like this from anyone in our government, will we?
No, we won't. And I think it, as you hear what she's saying, and of course, people who have monitored what's happening with this war, if Ukraine was our enemy, let's just say, and this is the kind of thing intelligence people, military people might do, we might play it out. How would this look if Ukraine was our enemy? We're the United States, and we're looking at Ukraine's capability to, I don't know, take back some land that has already been taken, and it was taken very rapidly, and it's well defended by an army 5 times the size of theirs, army with an industrial base, an army with an economy that's growing at 4% a year now. This is Russia I'm talking about. So
right,
how if we were Russia, or if we were the United States and we had an enemy that was in the financial and military and demographic and economic state and political leadership state that Ukraine is in now, what would be our assessment? And I think it would be very much the assessment that you've gotten from many of your guests and what the international community sees when they have third parties, people that aren't Americans, maybe aren't Russians, aren't Ukrainians, but they look at this from a more objective point of view. What they're saying is, this not only is this war lost, but it is turning into a war crime to continue it. And then you have to say, well, who's continuing it? Well, frankly, the eastern part that has been absorbed politically into Russia, the war is relatively over for them. I mean, they have Russian passports. They are building and rebuilding. Those Ukrainians that didn't want to go to Russia are not in there anymore. They've already gone. So we have that beside it. What's left is we're murdering them. And we are telling them, oh, it's better for you to go die, even though, they're recruiting 70-year-old, 60-year-old people and 16-year-old kids because they can't get enough soldiers. And we're saying, oh, keep doing that because that saves Europe money. That saves America money. That's a war crime in my book.
Look at Senator Mitt Romney of Utah and Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, who each said the same thing within minutes of each other. This is reprehensible, but I'm paraphrasing them, Karen. This is the best defense dollars we've ever spent. We're killing people and they're not Americans. And then they cheered.
Oh my God.
This is a war crime. We have become the terrorists. We are state terrorists, the type of people that Bush and Cheney used to rail against in all those years.
Yeah, and it's, as an American, I felt that our country did bad things, has done some bad things, certainly in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the things we shouldn't have done. And I didn't, but I would blame it on the politics or different things. But when you see senators saying things like that with no self-awareness and no understanding of international law, and clearly no understanding of what's actually happening to Ukraine on a daily basis right now, and nobody says, the media applauds it. Nobody says, oh, that's pretty bad what you're saying. I mean, there's so many things you can say in this country and you will find immediate correction, immediate complaint. You can't say that, but they can say that. They can say, we're letting Ukrainians die. We're so happy that Ukrainians are dying for us. And nobody says anything. They applaud. So our country, if that's the state of our country, certainly the state of Washington, it's gone too far. And clearly war crimes. We're lucky. We're lucky that we are at the tail end of our superpower status, because as soon as that drops, people in our government who say things like that will face severe problems in the international community. Much as Bush and Cheney couldn't travel to certain places, it can get way worse than that, and it's certainly deserved.
Gary, play Mrs. Clinton number 3. So this is the former Secretary of State. And you take a look at her hair. Your comment about her hair last week went viral, Karen. You say whatever you want, but her argument is this fight is our fight.
I know that the majority of Congress is still in favor of supporting Ukraine. So we've got to get through this period. We have to pass legislation and continue to support. And, Jeff, this fight is our fight. Honestly, I don't understand any American siding with Putin, but we've seen it and we've heard it, and we have to fight against it.
But did you know that people like you and Colonel McGregor and Scott Ritter and Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern and I, who are fiercely opposed to American aid to Ukraine, are siding with Putin? Can she be that naive as not to see the difference?
I don't know what audience she's speaking to, but I think she's dog whistling to a very dangerous movement in our country, which right now seems to be centered in the Democratic Party, but it's also in much of the Republican Party. Those two senators that you mentioned, Romney and the Blumenthal, what they're saying, it is what Hillary Clinton would say. And so we have a problem in this country, and it's not the people who are opposing an unconstitutional war. It's not the people that would like to see Ukrainians live and thrive and have peace. We are not the problem. The fact that she identifies us as the problem is something we do need to be concerned about, because she speaks for the majority in Washington, unfortunately. And I think related to that, the abuse that Matt Gaetz got for cheerleading or leading the to vacate the House speakership over unwanted and unwarranted and illegal aid to Ukraine, continued aid to Ukraine, military and otherwise. He's being held up as an enemy, and they're actually believe that he is wrong, and he and his cohorts are the only ones following the Constitution up there.
I don't agree with him on everything, but in this respect, he's a genuine American hero for the fight that he led. The intellectual guru of that gang of 8, Congressman Andy Biggs, is a friend of mine, and he's the constitutionalist and the philosopher among them. And I'm glad that between his philosophy and Matt Gaetz's bluster, they were able to keep the 8 of them together. But I do believe not only was this over the continuing resolution, which continued spending at Mrs. Pelosi levels, I think it was also over the well-grounded fear that Kevin McCarthy would soon combine with the rest of the uniparty, the big government party, the pro-war party, the national security state party, whatever you want to call them. It's 90% of everybody in Congress to resume the aid to Ukraine. And if not having a speaker of the House of Representatives for a while is the only way to stop aiding Ukraine and continuing the war, then so be it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Now, I forgot to ask you just saw Mrs. Clinton. Did her hair tell you anything, Karen?
Yeah, I'm telling you, she's got campaign hair. Her interview with Christian Amanpour, hair was slightly different, but the same kind of thing. She's out there. I think it's a desperate move, but I think they're worried about all of us, because it's not just you, Judge, and your guests and other people. The American people are way smarter than I think Washington, particularly on foreign policy. And it seems strange to say that, because we think of foreign policy as really the elite. We are willing to let the elites run that for us, but at this point, I think Americans are much wiser than our foreign policy team, and they are the majority. And I think Hillary and her cadre are aware of it, and I think they're very worried. But that doesn't mean
you and I have been beating up on politicians and on leaders of the intelligence community, but some of this belongs to the military as well. You told a heartbreaking story in your talk at the Mises Institute about a drone strike ordered by CENTCOM in Syria. Did Congress declare war on Syria? Did I miss that? Being snarky, we know the answer is no to both questions. And how the military boasted about their target that they thought they had killed, and then what they did when they realized who they had killed instead. Can you tell us that story in a minute or so?
Yeah, this happened, I guess, in May and they sent a drone strike out and killed a sheep herder. I think he had 10 kids. He was an older man. He had a large family, and they killed him. And immediately, General Kurilla, who runs CENTCOM, tweeted out that they had made this strike and details to come. But it was insinuated, of course, that they had got an Al Qaeda or some sort of whoever they're after now. I'm not sure who we're on which side now, but the enemy. And he rushed to make this tweet, and then within 10 days, they found out that was it. They had not got anybody. They killed an innocent person. And so the news, I think CNN or somebody reported on it, and they go, well, his people did advise him to hold off. And I drew the conclusion, the lesson they learned is we shouldn't tweet about killing these people with our drones immediately. We I know we want to please our masters in DC, but maybe we should make sure we have our data straight. And that's the lesson learned. I mean, it wasn't that we shouldn't kill sheep herders, and it wasn't that, hey, why are we at war in Syria, by the way? Why do we have people in Syria? What are we doing? Well, we're protecting oil that we're stealing from the Syrian government, but beyond that, is it this constitutional? Those questions are not a concern. The general, the lesson he will learn is to be cautious about his tweets, but not to be cautious about his drones and where he's striking, because he might get one, and then he can get points and a pat on the head, an attaboy from DC. It's disgusting and it's heartbreaking. That's where we are.
So the general's lesson is be cautious about your tweets, but not about whom you kill. Well, we'll end it on that, Karen. Thank you very much for joining us on a Friday afternoon. You are a fan favorite, one of whom writes, Karen is smart and lucid, another of whom likes, I like this lady too. Good person, methinks. Yes, you think correctly. She's not only good, she's brilliant, and above all else, she's honest. Thank you, Karen. A friend of mine, Karen, thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you again next week.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom. We have at 3:30 Eastern today, Ask the Judge. Type in your questions. I'll take the more incendiary ones today and give you your answers. That's coming up. You know what we do here. We look out for your liberty.